Greetings, two baristas. I've got some spare time, so I thought I'd regale you with an extra video or two for your entertainment and pleasure. Well, and as you know, there's a lot of hype over Hamas. This is just the latest installment of a half-century-old blood feud. The Al McCoys versus the Ben Hatfields, and the world is lining up behind its usual sides yet again. Let's see if we can cut through the Islamic rhetoric and cant of terrorism to see what's really going on here. Yes, well, first of all, it's the matter of the Gaza ghetto, which is what it is, what Israel and its army have established and maintained there by force. A dense, pulsating, pestilential human dump of the displaced. The same kind of human disposal site the Wehrmacht established in occupied Poland, in Warsaw or Lodz, or for other unwanted human detritus. Interestingly, the forebears, in some cases the direct ancestors, of the same people doing it to the Gazans. It seems like a case of it was done to us, so we're allowed to do it back. Well, in doing that, you play a game of moral relativism that undercuts your whole argument against those who did do it unto you. But we hear it's our land, given to us by God. That sleight of hand is the last defense of the Israeli occupation, and it's one the rest of the world is not obliged to go along with, any more than Jews are obligated to believe in the virgin birth of Jesus, or else they're anti-Christian murderers of little children and don't deserve the tax dollars of Christian American citizens. Under all recognized systems of secular law, the only kind of jurisprudence that carries weight in the international community, possession is 9/10 thereof. The Israeli Defense Force and the Israeli settlers are having to displace people who already lived there, who were displaced in 1948 and 1967 from other homes where they were in possession, the only recognized legal standard. And Israel knows this. The argument that it's ours because God said so, they know to be fatally weak and essentially bogus. That's why Israel has to create facts on the ground. Their term, not Arafat's, not Abu Nadal's. Of course, there's terrorism on both sides, and terrorism is not nice. It's ethically wrong. But have you ever seen a war or military occupation that was nice? That was ethically justified for all the human and environmental carnage it produced? The root problem, then, is to get the parties to find non-warlike ways of resolving differences. You don't do that by buying into the military logic of one side that says our security needs must come first. We must negotiate from strength. To go along with that, like the U.S. consistently does, is to play the role of a biased judge who's looking for an excuse to let a favored defendant off the hook. This reminds me of something Trotsky wrote, that only contemptible eunuchs will equate the violence of the slave seeking his freedom with the violence of the master in keeping him a slave. Whatever you think of Trotsky, you have to admit this is how most of you do think, when the situation applies to yourself. When it's someone, some group or class you think is expendable, it's suddenly a whole different issue, somehow. The old story of the killable versus the non-killable. Some blood is better shed than other types that are too precious for donating to the cause. But Azov, Hamas is ruled by Islamic fundamentalists that you can't reason with. I would say that Israel is ruled by Zionist fanatics of Likud that you can't reason with or trust. But let's give the Likudniks their due. If you've seen the film Defiance, it's the real-life story of the Bielski brothers who break out of their ghetto in Belarusia, as it was known then, who do not hesitate to use terror against their persecutors to survive. They really don't care what the occupiers of the Reich think of them or their tactics. They're in a war, and they'll side with anyone who will arm them to fight it. One of the brothers joins the Soviet partisans. Others fighting in the woods, we know this historically, were followers of Vladimir Jabotinsky, leader of hardline revisionist Zionism, the predecessor of the Likud, the Jewish Hamas of its day. He took the name Zayev, wolf in Hebrew. You can't get any more terrorist than that. If someone like me would come along and say to the Bielskis, I morally disapprove of your tactics, they'd say, after fuck you, that they're fighting to live like human beings, not slaves confined in a garbage dump waiting for premature death. Likewise, the residents of the Gaza dump can say the same thing to you. Who are you to judge us unless you've lived like us with another's foot on your neck, cutting off the very air you breathe to keep you in your place? Can Israel, the state of Israel, not the hunted Bielski brothers who are not existentially equivalent, can Israel say the same thing? No. Because it's in a position of power, of dominance. It's shaping the ground rules of the conflict. It can change the nature of its self-imposed dilemma at any time by refusing to be an occupier. The real problem here is that Israel refuses to recognize the existence of a Palestinian people or a Palestinian state. It used to be, in morally convenient days of old, that the problem was the Arab refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist. Now that's reversed. Israel's rhetoric dating from 1948 to 1967 rings ever more hollow down the time tunnel of relevance. Well, who can that be? Mossad, maybe? Hello? Malcolm X. You old fanatic, you. Muslim terrorist. Hey, maybe you can talk reason into your Muslim brothers over yonder in Gaza. I mean, it's as if your Nation of Islam took over Harlem, but that wouldn't change the surrounding reality they have to live in, now would it? What's that? You support their right to seek their freedom by any means necessary? Well, wait a minute now. That's endorsing terrorism. That's what we're fighting against. What's that? We use terrorism in Iraq. Well, that's because we were fighting for freedom. And when you're out there freedom fighting, you got to do what you got to do. What? By any means necessary? Look, Malcolm, you're missing the whole point. It's only freedom when it's our freedom. Like you always said, that doesn't include you.